Welcome to Week 5 of Learning Theories. As we journey this week to talk about different learning styles, I thought it would only be appropriate to provide an auditory version of our PowerPoint this week. So I hope you enjoy the journey. As we talk this week about learning styles, we need to talk about the culture of education. As we know, students learn in different ways. We have auditory, visual, kinesthetic learners, and throughout time it evolves for each student. Some students you'll actually find them to have a little bit in each category. But as we know, as the trends and research project, there's kind of a conveyor belt, if you will, showing that students in K2, your primary students, are more known to be kinesthetic learners. Auditory learners, you'll see more a grouping in that area for your 3rd through 5th grade students, and then visual, 6th grade through 12th. Which is over 40%. I think this does show a little bit about how our teaching styles evolve over time too, so the learner does have to make some accommodations. So the question is, how are our students smart? And how are we finding opportunities to help our students grow in each of the different areas? As we know, kinesthetic learners are those ones that move around a lot. Sometimes some people want to refer to them as the hyper kids, but that's not necessarily the case. These are kids that really benefit from moving around a lot. They need opportunities to reach out to people, stand about, move around. Any opportunity, whether it's something in their hand that they can manipulate, or the opportunity to move around through role playing and such too, helps this learner learn the information better. They can even memorize by walking and seeing it. So if you have that opportunity, I say go for it. The next type of learner is the visual learner. So they have to see it. They want to be able to see the information in front of them and then decide how they're going to organize the information. Visual learners are often known to be good spellers, and sometimes they have a problem remembering if they hear verbal instructions. They have to actually see, write down that map to understand how to get there. They also tend to be a little bit more on the quieter side, if you will, because they are just more trying to find that opportunity to visualize it. They're listening and trying to take in all the information at the appropriate times for them. Then we have the auditory learner. The auditory learner likes to learn by listening. Hope those auditory learners out there are benefiting from this. They tend to talk to themselves. Math and writing tend to be a little bit more difficult for them. Because they want to be able to see it instead of sitting down and actually writing it through, and they need to actually hear it, if you will. They memorize steps and procedures and are a more sequential type of learner. What's great, they usually can repeat back information better, so in a conversation they might meet someone and be able to repeat back what they've heard from them, and you can memorize that. They also move lips, and often you'll find them saying words when they're actually reading. So they're just it's another way for them to be able to hear it in their mind's eye, if you will. So there's a task here that just is something you could try with your students. If you want to say certain words and then ask them what comes to mind first, either have them write it down or say it out loud just off the cuff and just brainstorm what they hear. This is a quick way to do an overall assessment to find out what your students, what type of students they are, if they're visual, kinesthetic, or auditory learners. I've provided a learning style chart, and this chart just lets you know it's kind of a good check-in for yourself as well as for your students. The major areas are when you meet people, if you're with your spelling, talking to people, as well as reading. What happens to you, or what are some of the tools you use per se when you are actually learning or trying to remember this information? So look this chart over and like I said, kind of do a quick self-assessment on yourself, as well as you might be able to try it with your students. What we have to remember is now we've kind of blend what we've talked about the last couple weeks into this week is our brain, learning styles, and multiple intelligence. There are 4 different areas that we want to focus on and how they can kind of all merge together. Eric Jensen is one of my favorite authors when it comes to learning more about the brain. And he says when a student feels helpless in the face of a learning experiment or threatened by an assignment, a defense trigger is pulled on by the brain. So the learner reacts and goes into a state of duress or distress, and then there's basically no learning is taking place. So essentially like a fight or flight system, which we talked about last week with emotional intelligence. So we have to be thinking about what kind of activities are we doing that provide opportunities to go into all areas of intelligence and not just always in the same area. We want to match that strategy to the learning styles and then use new activities without having high stakes where they feel that they're taking a little bit too much of a risk. The other area you have to think about is challenge, and we want to be challenging them beyond their means, but not in a way that makes them struggle or feel like they are a failure, if you will. So even though there are students who sometimes feel like they want to stay in their comfort zone, what are we doing to extend them out of their comfort zone to test their knowledge base, just so they're not kind of getting by? We know those students who tend to just see, I think if I just do a little bit here and a little bit there, then I'll get the grade I want. But what are we doing to extend and stretch them a little bit further? Thirdly, depth. Jensen talks about we have to spend more time and get into more depth to really understand it. As we know, Madeline Hunter says, if you're just going to cover it, just cover it with dirt. I do know due to time and assessment purposes, we sometimes don't get enough time to really immerse ourselves into the content. But the more that you can, and you maybe create centers after the information, to lay that foundation, make those connections, make it more of an interpersonal as well as interdisciplinary lesson, the better for the students. Basically, all those dendrites will start making connections, and they'll be able to learn the information longer. And lastly, motivation. How are we keeping our students motivated? What are the things that they are interested in? What are some of the things they like to explore in topics and activities? And how can we interject those into the activities we have to cover and things that they would want to cover? So it's something to be thinking about as you plan your long-term strategies. Well, we put all these together, and you have to remember that learning styles is about the process that we go through to understand where to meet our students' needs. And then the multiple intelligence is more about the content and how we account for that information and just help our students make, like I said before, greater connections to their learning. There are a variety of different learning style models out there. There's thousands that you've probably entertained yourself through, maybe the Colors Personality Test. There's such a variety that you can think about. The Jung's model of psychological types is another one. We talk about the thinking and feeling and sensing and intuition. I've provided some resources if that is another area that you might want to entertain for your classroom. And I give a little bit of explanation about this that describes the sensory and intuition and just understanding the difference between the two. Sensing it, if you're more of a sensor, you want to see more specifics. If you go with intuition, you like the big picture and the overall theme. When making judgment calls, the thinker has to look through it and not react right away. They might pause longer than we prefer, but they're thinking it through, while feelers are more motivated by their emotions, and sometimes they react. You'll have the opportunity to see a Seinfeld production this week, and just for fun in your wiki, and you could be thinking about other characters that we might all know that might go through this same process. I know Winnie the Pooh is another area that they often talk about that go through these same areas if you decide if you're more of an Eeyore or a Tigger, if you will. So this just for fun, because I know that Seinfeld is something that a lot of people are aware of. Talks about the different characters in that movie, and something maybe even students can relate to, and how you would fit them into those different characteristics and learning styles. So we know that learning styles impacts our education. It impacts our curriculum and what we are setting up each and every day for our students. It impacts our instruction as well as our assessment means. And I know we have some control over it and some not always, but just to be thinking about that, how are we setting up those three major components in our daily schedules so that we help meet those needs. There are so many theories but so little times, and we need to be thinking about how we perceive those different learning styles and meet those needs. And once again, I challenge you, is this student smart, or how is this student smart is the way of thinking we need to pursue. And I wish you luck in this week to come. I hope you're having a great, fabulous week. Goodbye.